You're listening to NGSC Sports Radio. Hear us live on ngscsports.com, where you can get awesome analysis for all things sport. Or check out our podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, and much more. For our latest videos, head to NGSC Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at NGSC Sports and like us on Facebook. NGSC Sports. We never stop.
This is the Happy Hour Network.
Pay attention, son. This is for your own good.
This is Andy Carlson of the Purple for the Win podcast, dedicated to the pain and pleasure that is the Minnesota Vikings, and you're listening to the Earnestly Speaking Podcast. Big E is the second coolest guy I know, right behind Elon Musk.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking Podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Huff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
I think Alabama's way too high.
I mean, this is the thing about college football and the NFL. It's the same way right now. There is no dominant team.
It is.
Who are you going to put over Alabama?
Ohio State.
A one-loss Ohio State who's beaten nobody?
Ohio State, one loss. Oh, because Alabama.
Well, Alabama's going to win the SEC.
Yeah.
What's Ohio?
And the SEC sucks this year. Can we be honest? I've been wanting to even tell you that SEC for the last 15 years has been the best conference by far, but for the last 2 years it's been slippage, and this year it is not even the best conference in football.
No, I want to say before the minute last year ended, when Alabama lost, I told my buddy I'm the first one jumping off this bandwagon. You know what I'm saying? There's good teams. There's no more elite teams. You know what I'm saying? The Big Ten is going to turn into the Big Two, and then there's a lot of parity in college football. There's a lot of teams that can compete with everybody. Having said that, you can't legitimately, if Alabama wins the SEC, say that Ohio State, having beaten nobody, had some really close games against some mediocre teams like Northern Illinois.
Alabama's toughest game this year was against the number 21 ranked LSU. What are you telling me right now, dude?
Who did Ohio State play?
They played Michigan, who's ranked. They played Michigan.
They play who?
Michigan State, who's ranked.
They lost.
Okay. Who else they play? They play a couple L-ranked teams there.
I'm saying, who's their wins? Who's their wins?
Well, wasn't it Vox Heck early in the year? That's a good win now. Vox is pretty good this year. And they were ranked at the time. And I think they're still ranked now.
Did you just say the Bobcats? Did you say Bobcats? I mean, that's like saying that Northern Illinois is a quality win. Yes, Northern Illinois is not some schlep team. But that's not a quality win for Ohio State. And secondly, the Michigan, and I'm not, by no means am I tainting the Michigan-Ohio State game. But we both know whoever plays a Nick Saban or Urban Meyer team the week following the loss is going to pay dearly. Like, Urban Meyer was going to beat Michigan with purpose. You knew that.
Let's not get twisted. I think Alabama's still a top 4 team, maybe top 5 team in the playoffs. I'm not saying they're not. But to sit there and tell me that they're number 2, best team in the country, I think that's debatable. I think that's very much debatable.
So who's number 2? Oklahoma? There's not a defense in the entire Big 12.
I mean,
Iowa, really? Michigan State. This is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying more. And in years past, Alabama would not be a number 2 team. But in this year's college football, I can see it because nobody's really great.
I don't know, man. It's Alabama's great. I mean, I'm never gonna knock them. Saban, look, here's one of Nick Saban. We all hate him, but the guy does his job, and he does it to the best but I just don't know.
Yeah, let me make one strong point. Did you watch the LSU game? Did you watch it? Yeah. Florida couldn't get past the line of scrimmage.
Well, I thought that was
probably it's going to just hand him the Heisman. I mean, nobody
right.
And he couldn't get past the line of scrimmage.
Correct.
That doesn't deserve some credibility.
No, and I thought when they beat LSU, that was their turning point. I was like, okay, good. They get out the Ole Miss game. They got the Ole Miss wash now. They can make the run. LSU was good. They were a top 5 team at the time when it happened, when they beat them. But now, how LSU's looked the last month since that loss, it's like, okay, Ole Miss too. They lose Ole Miss, we think, Ole Miss is a great team, and then the very next week they got destroyed by Florida.
Dude, to me, it's not about the way out. It's not about Alabama beating LSU. They completely shut down the greatest player in college football this year. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fournette had like 39 yards. Shut him down completely. Like he was averaging over 190 yards a game, got less than 40 yards rushing. And that defense doesn't deserve that credibility. You remember what they did against LSU in the national championship a couple years ago?
Yeah.
They didn't get past the 50-yard line once. Until Nick Saban has proven otherwise, he deserves the credit.
Let me ask you a question, though. The Les Miles thing, he's going to stay apparently now. What was your thoughts on the whole Les Miles thing?
I mean, if you want, coach is always going to come in second or third, that's fine. Georgia finally saw with Mark Richt, listen, he's not going to take us to the promised land. He's got to go. Les Miles Mark Richt is going to look great in Miami. Les Miles would look great in any school that he didn't have to play Nick Saban once a year. I mean, I think he's a good coach. He's not, he's not elite. He's not Urban Meyer. He's not Jim Harbaugh. But, a mid-tier program, if they got Les Miles, should be thrilled. But
agreed. I agree. Do you think LSU should let him go?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when the Chargers got rid of Marty Schottenheimer after they went 14-2. Like, I don't have a problem with you firing, but you better have a really good replacement. And seeing as how nobody else, I mean, the only way I can see is if Philly runs Chip Kelly out of the schedule.
Right. Because
Georgia.
Because see what Georgia did to Rick, I understood that. That was to me, it felt more understandable what they did. But with Les Miles, who actually won a championship, granted, I know we're going to use, you use Nick Saban's players, But still, he's had a level of consistency at LSU for the most part. Now, I know the last couple of years they've been a little bit, under the national spotlight, but, I mean, I just think that I think LSU was a little bit too, let's just say, trigger fingerish in trying to get rid of Les Miles, and then the backlash it got after it, I don't think they expected that to happen.
Well, I mean, how can you say that, it was premature? Like, he won, everybody says Larry Coker won with Butch Davis's players, right? How long after Nick Saban left LSU did Les Miles win a national championship?
I think 2 years after. 2 years, 3 years after.
So we could say that he did it with a lot of Nick Saban's players, and what has he done since then? Like, what has he done to deserve keeping his job?
Well, like I said, I think the only argument you have about Les Miles not being at LSU anymore is the last 3-4 years of LSU maybe slipping a little bit. I mean, they're still got a winning record, but they haven't been as great as they were in, say, 2009, 10, 11. I mean, if you want to have an argument, that's the one you're going to have. But unless you're telling me you're going to get Chip Kelly or a guy who can change the culture and then win and do what Les hasn't done in the last 5 years, I don't see why you make that change. Now, Mark Richt, I understand that part. That part I understand because he plays a very easy division, too, in the SEC East, rather. And the only thing he had to deal with really in the last 15 years was Florida.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, just to make the point I'm about to make, right?
Yeah.
If somebody, let's say hypothetically, the guy's dating a girl, and he knows she's not the one, but he knows as long as he's with this girl, he's never going to really meet a great girl because great girls aren't going to try to, they have breast home, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So right now he's doing himself a disservice by sticking around with her. Like he'd be better off just giving her the boot. Life sucks for a couple minutes, couple weeks, whatever, and then you can move on. Like LSU, if you know you're not going to be with Les Miles, and other coaches might be intimidated to step on Les Miles' toes, maybe they don't know how seriously LSU's thinking about opening the job. Great coaches are going to look elsewhere. So LSU, unless they can, unless the timing is fit, then they can go from him to Chip Kelly or somebody else. They need to find, they have to let him go, and hopefully, a big name will pop up.
So it sounds like you were for LSU getting rid of Les Miles.
Yeah, I mean, when you're, if you keep Les Miles, you are setting a precedent that mediocrity is acceptable. It's not. For some schools, it's fine. I'm saying, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Clemson or, like a Georgia Tech. That's what happened at Georgia. Mark Richt created a mediocrity as acceptable atmosphere.
I think mediocrity is a little bit of a stretch there. I mean, you still win 9-10 games a year. I don't think that's mediocre. I think it's a little bit under the bar that Georgia really wanted. Ultimately, was to at least win the SEC every year, which they hadn't done.
I'm saying that you look at Florida, you would say has been a more successful program. Alabama, LSU have been more successful programs. Auburn has been a more successful. So right now we're seeing Georgia in the last 8 years is number 4. Mark Richt had to go. And we're talking about number 4 in their conference. There are certain schools, Ohio State, Michigan, that you can't accept mediocrity. If you're not taking this team to the promised land, you got to go. I mean, where Les Miles should go? He should go to Notre Dame, because that team sucks. They're never going to be great, and at least Les Miles can
Wait, Notre Dame?
Yeah, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame has been very competitive the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, I'm not a fan, but they've been in the mix for the last. I mean, the fact that
let me make a point real quick, and then I do have to get going. Okay. Notre Dame, every time they play a big boy football team, gets beat off the field. FSU, was it last year, 2 years ago, whatever, that close game? What happened to FSU when they played Oregon? They got whacked. FSU wasn't legitimate. Notre Dame didn't go toe-to-toe with a legitimate team.
Yeah, but we kind of knew that. We kind of knew FSU was on the way out anyway.
I'm saying, Notre Dame hasn't gone toe-to-toe with a legitimate team. You saw what happened against Alabama. You knew 3 plays into that game, Notre Dame had no business being on that field. They are not going to have. Notre Dame will never have the talent to play with a big team, because that's athletes. It's like I tell everybody on the train. You take an 18-year-old kid to South Beach and South Bend, he's going to Miami. The weather sucks in Indiana. It doesn't have the prestige it used to have. Notre Dame doesn't have the only TV contract. Kids aren't going there. You don't see kids today, 16, 17 years old, say, I want to go be the Fighting Irish. I mean, kids will say, I don't want to go to this school because it's an Adidas school. I want to go to a Nike school. I want to go to Under Armour school. There's new things making decisions. Notre Dame has nothing to their advantage that's going to bring these players in. They're not going to have the ability to compete. That's just, plus they don't even have a conference They have a conference championship. There's nothing about Notre Dame that's prestigious as far as, think you can get to the NFL.